Well, Chief Minister, how was it for you?
Well, thank you very much, James. Could I actually just endorse the thank yous that you've given? I'd particularly like to thank the team that have worked on putting the conference together. I hope everybody will agree that I feel it's been very professionally run and well executed. So perhaps we could give the team a round of applause and just say... we started this off as a new initiative with this government. I mean, I know this word transparency is sort of used a lot and often criticised, but we have tried to make steps forward to be more open, to be more engaging as a government, and that means putting ministers on the spot to a degree. And we collectively agreed that ministers will go and present departmental plans to Tynwald to face Tynwald scrutiny. But the government conference and indeed recently the roadshows have been an opportunity to reach out, and we'll set the conference up, James, as not just a chance for us to lecture to people, but hopefully to try and engage with people, get viewpoints back, and really sort of elucidate around the key issues of the day. So I do very much hope that over the course of the conference, at least to some degree, you feel that you've been engaged and that we have spoken and addressed, not every issue that government's facing, but some of those core critical issues. And I hope, I talk about education and learning, and part of that view of these conference initiatives was to walk away having learned something, both politically as politicians, and whether that be learning something new about what's going on in government or hearing views and suggestions from the people who have attended. So I just want to say thank you. I hope it has been of value to you from that perspective. I will certainly walk away of from these 2 days, taking away some clear observations, both about mood but also input. And actually also having learned a few things about what's also taking place across the public sector.
In terms of the road shows, is it that I know they went down pretty well last April early this year. Is the plan to repeat those next spring in one form or another?
Yeah, very much so. And I mean, I think clearly, partly the politics of the sort of town hall, if you like, where there is a very active question and answer session, can at times be quite aggressive, perhaps, or defensive. Maybe is the right word. And clearly you're trying to state your policies, defend your position, but also perhaps take from the questions that are being put to you the point of addressing things maybe in a different way, or the dissatisfaction. I think one of the things about the conference is that we've been able to explore things in greater detail. We won't often get the time with Tynwald to sit down and talk about issues such as immigration, such as border security, and how these critical matters are developing and influencing us, and also what we need to do to address them, and the balance that we need to strike. And that's actually, you get more time at an event like this, perhaps should be really to be less defensive, more open, and I hope receive those views in an open and positive way.
In that format. You'll never please all of the people all of the time, of course you won't, but is there anything that jumps, and I appreciate it, off the top of your head, but is there anything particular that jumps out to you over the last few days that you think, right, me and my ministers and we want to sit down and look at this a bit more closely?
So I feel that the critical issues are shared by people. I mean, clearly we haven't focused on health. We haven't focused on education. I know they will be very, very important issues. The theme of this conference has been very much about the economy, and I hope I set the tone in terms of where that needed to go. And, I did deliberately set out with a fairly strong expression of where the government priorities ought to lie over the next 12 months. And we talked very much about security and stability. And that meant, the security of physical security, environmental security, fiscal security. And obviously we extended that to a degree into energy and environment. But I think this is a very, very important theme that addresses some of those key challenges. It was very interesting just listening to Paul's input there about how the sort of governments change over over 5 years. And I think for the island, I feel that things are changing and changing quickly around us, and we are having to react to increased pressures in some areas, and they're very much the events of the day. They're not necessarily planned for, but we do need to tackle them, and tackle them quickly, and we do need to tackle them together as well. And part of that is sharing a mutual understanding about what those issues are, some of the detail behind those issues, and also what needs to be done in terms of government investment, government spending, government policies, to deal with that effectively, and hopefully with the support and togetherness of the community as well. And we will reflect very much on some of the input that's been given. I think there's been some very interesting sessions. I welcome the session today on immigration. I think that's quite a challenging subject. It's not necessarily one that everybody wants to talk about. It's quite detailed, it's quite technical, it's a tricky subject, but I felt there was some really interesting input coming from people at the coalface, but also from other people who have a clear interest in us, getting this right.
How do you and your administration get the right balance, I suppose, between those external pressures you mentioned, dealing with those as much as they face the island, but also making sure you don't, or you try not to take your eye off the ball with some of the more local demands, the more immediate demands?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a really good question, because, as Paul said, I mean, when you're in opposition, government seems very simple. Clearly, when you're in the hot seat, so to speak, it can be quite complex, and everybody, of course, is naturally concerned about those issues of the day that are materially impacting them, and that's late buses or cancelled buses, or a flight that doesn't take off, or I don't know, the reaction of the police to a crime that's been committed. And absolutely, delivery of public services, the efficiency of that is always at the forefront of your mind. But to a large degree, many of these issues are operational issues. In other words, the policy, we know the policy is there, but a lot of them come down to operational issues. And at the same time, as getting oversight on that and understanding on that, we are trying to look at driving the island forward in terms of making progress. And that really often revolves around the policy decisions that you're making, the direction of travel, and then, of course, putting the legislation in to actually enact that effectively. So getting that balance right, requires actually very much a sort of agile approach. And one of the beauties of my job, I'm very privileged, I'm sure for other ministers as well, but particularly my job, is that I don't actually quite know what's going to hit me, from hour to a degree when dealing with politics, because in pace of communications, the speed at which things happen clearly, and the way they're communicated these days makes the role of the politician now, have this need to work very quickly and communicate effectively. And I know a lot of people have spoken to me over the last 2 days about how we communicate, the need for us to communicate effectively, and that's something that we continue to work on.
We're not going to specify on specific issues now, because we're drawing this to a close, but I just do need to want to ask you about Manx Care, from your position, over budget or underfunded? Well,
I think I did try to address this yesterday, I think, James. I mean, I think the priority is to get it back into control when it comes to its finances. And then we just need to look at across the piece again at what's happening, what services it is delivering. And look, as soon as I feel that with some confidence that we can be clear and satisfied that the money that it is getting at the moment is being spent in the most efficient way, then there is clearly that need to have that conversation with the community if we are in a position where we do not have the funding available for the demands of healthcare. And I think that conversation may have to take place. It's not something that can just take place in a couple of months. I think that sort of conversation has to take place over possibly 12 or 48 months. But at some point, we need to determine clearly whether there is enough funding available for healthcare delivery into the long term, and or how that should potentially be changed. But you have to engage in the community. I just don't see that as a straight out political decision. I think that does require us to sit down in forums like this, go through it, and we'll never all 100% agree all the time, but there is definitely an engagement piece that needs to happen around this. But before it does, we've got to get on top and on control of the budgets and be clear that it is being spent, as most efficiently and effectively as possible.
Mid-September, so what? Just over 2 years until the next general election. Without making any promises, is your team in place for that duration now, or are you planning any potential changes?
Listen, it's a good, I think Phil Gorn sort of asked me that question today. Look, we are a robust but united council. We address the issues of the day as you might expect. We have different opinions. We put those opinions on the table. We have those robust discussions, and then we get behind a position and we move forward.
So this is the team you'd expect to see you through.
Absolutely. I mean, it's been a I was like, the political system as such, but in any political system, I guess, but in our political system, the democracy is such that the public put in a variety of people who are not necessarily united behind a single manifesto. We have to draw the very best of the different viewpoints into a united plan, or in this case, our island plan, and we broadly have to stick with it. But in any period of time, there will always be the events of the day that will overtake things that are written down in paper. I mean, as, who was it, said, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Well, those punches keep rolling, right? And, you have to adjust, and you have to work hard, and you have to deliver solutions quickly in order to get things back on track. And I think I'm very pleased with the way the council ministers will address those issues, have those hard conversations, but unite behind the way forward.
And if I can just finish off by asking you, if you had 2 priorities for the next 12 months, what would they be?
Well, I've been very clear. Security, physical security, and economic security, and I'll include within that our fiscal security as well. And that is very much the theme and the overarching drive that I and Council will attach now to delivery, and we will apply that in a variety of areas, whether that is tackling the issues that we've talked about today at our ports, whether that is ensuring that people have confidence that our immigration processes are tight, that our financial crime program is on place, that people have trust and confidence in our economic security, both in terms of its long-term sustainability, but also its integrity. And that will be the mantra, I think, that I've set out in that speech. And having listened to the conference and listened to the input that we've received, I see no reason why that should not be the absolute theme that we come through. And I feel as if a lot of people have come behind that, albeit there are some of these technicalities in terms of the approach does need to be refined.
And going back to you, I just remembered your opening comments yesterday morning. Presumably you feel safe to go and have a wander on the golf course this evening.
Yeah, no, I think so. But can I just finish by saying, to everybody, thank you very much for your input over the last 2 days, and to everybody who's not in here, and indeed to all the public who will be watching this if they choose to do so when the recordings are released. I don't think anybody ever thinks that things are easy, and I think, as I said in my opening remarks, I know, my colleagues know, in fact, we all know there are a lot of difficulties. But at the same time, underneath it, I think what we can see is that we are also making progress as an island. And I think when you hear people like Paul, when you read things like Moody's, from the external view, actually it looks a lot more positive. And often it takes a crisis for us to recognize how lucky and safe and secure we are on this island, and how much there is for us to achieve by working together, continuing to have confidence that we can achieve, and drawing on all the skills and capabilities that we've got in the room this afternoon, and indeed around our island. And, you know, it's up to me and to others to communicate our successes, but also to communicate the critical issues of the day and to give you confidence, A, that we are listening, but B, we are taking action. And in some cases, we do, I think, needed to be a bit more assertive from Council now in tackling some of these critical issues, because that confidence must be retained that we are tackling them and we are going to move forward successfully as an island. But thank you very, very much to everybody for everything that you've contributed, and I look forward to continuing the discussions. And I don't want to keep anybody from a glass of wine or a glass of fizz or whatever the sponsors have laid on for us, but thank you all very much indeed.
And just to recap what the Chief Minister said, thank you for attending on and off or collectively over the last 2 days. Thank you for engaging. Thank you for taking part and participating in one form or another. Please do stay and join the team and your fellow attendees for a drink in the Snaefell Suite. And until next time, good afternoon.